Discover 2 spine-chilling true horror stories that expose sinister secrets of 4th of July. Sarah clutched her son Danny's hand as they stepped into Maplewood, a town draped in an almost eerie calm, where laughter mingled with whispers of the past. The sky was painted blue, flags waved proudly in the warm breeze, but something lay beneath it, a layer of unease wrapped tight around Sarah's heart. She had heard of rivers that ran deep and not all of them were full of sunshine. As the 4th of July approached, excitement bubbled over the town like spilled soda, but Sarah felt a cold tingle running down her spine. The elderly couple next door, Miss Agnes and Mr. Finch, adorned their yard with paper lanterns and streamers that danced in the wind. They smiled, but it felt forced, like the twitch of a marionette manipulated by unseen strings. What secrets did they hide behind those cheerful facades? She dismissed her paranoia as she joined a town meeting, where the sheriff, polite yet watchful, kept glancing her way. He spoke in honeyed tones, but the weight in his gaze made Sarah's hair stand on end. Could it be this small town was not as innocent as it seemed? Just days before the celebration, Sarah found missing posters plastered along the notice board like a demented collage. Pets, animals, and a couple of children, faces smiling in life but now haunting her thoughts. The frantic energy of the upcoming fireworks added to the buzzing nerves in her chest. She pushed it aside. They were supposed to enjoy the day. As the night fell, a magical energy hummed in the air, a cacophony of laughter, sizzling grills, and sparkling lights overhead. Danny squeezed her hand, eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, fireworks!" he cried, bouncing on his toes. They ventured deeper into the square, dodging excited kids darting like fireflies. Then, amidst the burst of color above, Sarah lost sight of her little boy. Fear crashed over her like ice water. Panic tore through her, calling his name as her heart thundered in her chest. The laughter faded, swallowed by her rising dread. The crowd thickened, a boiling cauldron of chaos. As she pushed through, every step felt heavier, the laughter now laced with something darker that gnawed at her gut. Suddenly, shadows twisted among the trees lining the square, and a chill seeped into the warm summer air. It felt like eyes, hundreds of them, were boring into her back. The woods loomed like a dark secret, branches clawing at the sky. The flickering lights of fireworks illuminated an unsettling scene, revealing more missing posters fluttering like ominous flags in a ghostly wind. She turned, desperation screaming inside her. Before she could fully comprehend, she noticed movement. Danny? It shimmered like a mirage among the underbrush. "Danny!" she called, voice barely above a whisper. He could be there. Her heart raced, driving her into the woods, the laughter now twisted into shrieks of sheer terror echoing within her mind. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the gloom, something whispered, laughter twisted with a deep, croaky undertone. The air grew thicker, shaky breaths turned icy. A scream ripped through the night, then silence fell like a heavy blanket. With growing dread, Sarah released the illusion of safety she had built. If she didn't find Danny, would this be the last July celebration? As she stepped forward, shadows flickered around her, closing in fast. Whatever haunted this town was set on claiming more than her fragile hope. The unknown pulled her deeper into the woods, the path obscured and twisted, revealing secrets buried under the bright facade of Maplewood. Could she find him before the sinister truth swallowed them whole? Branches scraped against each other, forming cruel whispers that seemed to call out to Sarah. Shadows, like predators, danced around her, flickering in and out of existence, making her question her very sanity. Every step she took deeper into the woods felt like stepping further away from reason. "Danny!" she shouted, her voice cracking, lost in the echo of the trees. The thickening darkness clung to her like a shroud, dousing her fear in a clammy coldness. She strained her ears, hoping to catch any sign of her son, a child's laugh, a faint cry, anything that could tether her back to him. Then, faintly, carried on the damp air, she heard a giggle. Was that Danny? Or was it something pretending to be him? The sound twisted her gut, igniting a primal urge to turn and flee, but she pressed on. She had to find him. The forest seemed alive, its pulse matching her frantic heartbeat. Upon reaching a small clearing, the silvery glow of the moon bathed the ground in a ghostly light. It felt like a blackened stage, where nightmares played out their twisted theater. Here, among the trees, something was off, a chill that ran deeper than the night itself. Suddenly, she spotted something red, a child's shirt snagged on a jagged branch, fluttering like a warning flag. The air became thick with dread. Every instinct told her to stay, to search, to call for Danny, but something told her to run. She reached for the fabric, her fingers trembling as nausea washed over her. Mom? Hope exploded within her, and she spun around. There, just a few yards away, was Danny. His face was smeared with mud, his hair disheveled, but he stood there alive. But his expression froze her blood. Eyes wide with an innocence that felt so wrong. Danny! She ran toward him, hardly believing the sight, but as she reached him, he didn't wrap his arms around her. Instead, he stepped back into the shadows, a disconcerting smile creeping across his face that didn't match the fear vibrating in her core. Don't go, it's not safe, he said in a tone that was eerily calm, too calm. Danny, what's going on? We have to go. Now. He didn't budge, his eyes darting past her as if something was there, lurking just out of view. Behind her, the laughter came again, the sinister undertone woven through, mocking her frantic state. It was a sound she didn't recognize, a sound that had no place in a 4th of July celebration. A growl rumbled, deep and threatening, rising up from the shadows. She turned again, but nothing was there. Sarah's heart thundered, a primal beat that screamed danger. Come on, honey. She urged him, pulling him toward her, desperate to break whatever trance held him. But Danny only giggled, a strange echo of glee mixed with something that sounded darker, more sinister. Mommy, he said, stepping further back, they want to play. Fear clawed at her throat as she glanced beyond Danny, finding the shadows rippling and thickening, shapes twisting among the trees. She realized with horror this wasn't just a game. It was a hunt. Panic surged as she grabbed Danny's arm. We have to go. And then she saw it, hunched figures blinking into existence just beyond the trees, eyes glimmering like stars against the dark backdrop. A sense of dread pressed in from all sides, heavier than any night she had ever known. Mom! Danny cried, pulling away, his small body slipping from her grasp as he darted toward the shadowy figures, an insidious force pulling him like a moth to a flame. No! Sarah screamed, lunging for him, but the pull was too strong. The shadows closed in on her son, wrapping around him like a maw waiting to close. The world spun as she reached out, fear turning her limbs to lead. The laughter merged into a deafening chorus, drowned by the roar of her racing heart. And in that moment, as the figures slashed toward her, a cold realization gripped Sarah. This place was a trap, and she had stumbled right into its hungry jaws. What horrors lay in wait for them both? The shadows tightened around Danny, a frightened look on his small face. She had to find a way to save him before the sinister night claimed them both. But could she defy whatever awaited in the dark? Run! She shrieked, but would they escape in time, or would Maplewood's secret drag them both under? Danny! Sarah screamed again, dread clawing at her throat. Every inch between her and her son felt like a chasm, dark and insurmountable. The shadows loomed closer, shifting, breathing as if they were alive, hungry. Danny stood motionless, his eyes locked on the darkness. They want to play. His voice was sweet, innocent, but the way he said it sent icy tendrils of fear wrapping around her heart. She could sense the malice behind his words, an unsettling hint that he wasn't talking about games anymore. "Danny, listen to me." She pushed through the encroaching darkness, reaching out. "Come back." But each desperate step felt heavier than the last, as if the ground beneath her were conspiring to hold her hostage. Suddenly, the figures emerged from the shadows, their forms blurred, indistinct. A sickly sweet aroma drifted towards her, mixing with the sharp scent of damp earth, a scent that could turn to bile in her throat. She didn't allow her eyes to focus on them, she couldn't. It was the way they moved unhinged, like puppets on twisted strings, that terrified her. "Mommy! Help me!" The real fear in Danny's voice broke her heart. "No!" she shouted, a surge of adrenaline igniting her spirit. She lunged toward him, but just as she reached his outstretched hand, the figures darted forward, twisting around him like smoke. They grinned, revealing stretch marks of jagged teeth behind cracked lips, shadows gnashing as they forged their intentions. "No!" The shadows reached, and Danny was yanked backward into their swirling embrace, his face vanishing behind a wall of darkness. A shriek tore from Sarah's throat, a primal wail of despair. She felt the vibrations throughout the air, as if nature itself was screaming in response, but then she heard the laughter again. It was brighter now, more enticing, filling her with a false sense of warmth that made her skin crawl. "Join us, Sarah," it purred, sweet and beckoning. "We can play together. Forever. Get away from my son." She shouted defiantly, stepping closer, willing the power to command the darkness to vanish. But they simply hovered nearer, shadows longer and more sinister, pulling in closer until she barely could see. In an act of blind desperation, Sarah pulled her cell phone from her pocket and flicked on the flashlight. Brilliant white light cut through the thick blackness, revealing glimmers of the creatures snaring Danny. Their faces twisted, morphing in agony at the sight of it, but the shadows clung tighter around her son, shielding him from her light. "Mommy!" Danny cried, his voice breaking, heart pounding. Sarah realized she had to face them. She had to break through whatever grip they had on his little mind. "Danny, look at me. Focus on my voice." But as the shadows shrieked in agony, writhing back from her light, she felt the ground moving beneath her, shifting like quicksand. Her feet stumbled, and she felt the panic rising like bile in her throat. How could these creatures exist in this world? Why did they want her son? Was he truly trapped, or was this some sick illusion crafted from fear and despair? Then, in a sudden flash of clarity, she remembered the old stories her grandmother had told her about the wood. Something about the way it fed off the fears of many. Was Danny merely a pawn in that game? "Danny!" She shouted again, forcing the fear out of her voice. "I need you to fight. Fight them." But then, shockingly, the laughter returned, riding the night wind. "He ours now," it taunted, the shadows twisting around him like a cocoon. "Danny!" Sarah lunged again. The light flickered, the shadows strained against it, twisting and weaving through branches. Gripping the ground, she pulled herself forward. The shadows writhed. Were they even real, or mere tricks of the night? "What will you give us for your son?" they hissed, their voices a chorus of whispers. A blood-chilling silence filled the air as the shadows extended their hands, shards of darkness reaching for her like fingers coiling around her soul. All Sarah had was her strength, her undying love for her son. But what if it wasn't he? Enough, with the tormenting laughter echoing in her ears, a single question consumed her: how much would she sacrifice to save him? Before she could respond, a deeper growl resonated from the depths of darkness, shaking her bones and pushing her to the brink. What awaited them in this suffocating night? Was escape still possible, or were they both destined to become part of the forest's terrible secret? "Danny!" Sarah screamed again, her voice cracking under the strain. The shadows twisted, writhing like 100 serpents, each movement making her stomach lurch. She darted forward, fear as sharp as a blade slicing through her resolve. "Join us," the shadows cooed, their voices a haunting echo of her son's innocence. She clenched her fists, the urge to shatter their whispers burning in her veins. "Stay away from him," she roared, forcing herself between Danny and the phantoms. But the shadows just laughed, that sickening sound weaving into the very fabric of night. The laughter made the air thick, wrapping around her like a shroud, tightening, stifling. Suddenly, an explosion of noise shattered the eerie quiet, making her jump. A chorus of whispers grew louder. "What will you give us? A piece of your heart? Your soul?" Their eyes gleamed in the dim light, pinpricks of white shining against the midnight canvas. "Stop it. Stop. You're lying," Sarah yelled, trampling over her own fear. They wanted to feed off her desperation. They wanted her to crumble. But she wouldn't. Not now. Not after everything. She directed the beam of light towards Danny, illuminating his terrified face just for a moment. "Look at me. I'm right here," she urged, but the shadows clawed at him, whispering confusion into his mind. "Danny, fight them," she cried, feeling the very ground pulse with their sickening energy. The darkness hissed and recoiled from her light. Fangs flashed in the glow as the shadows twisted into grotesque, unholy shapes far worse than she had imagined. As she tightened her grip on the flashlight, a surge of realization coursed through her. The stories. The tales of sacrifice, echoing through generations. If the woods fed on fear, what if they needed something more? "What do you want? Just tell me," she shouted, her voice almost hoarse now. The laughter morphed into something deeper, almost sinister, half laughter, half growl. "Freedom comes with a price, oh mother." The shadows danced around her, aching to entwine her, reveling in her fear. "Leave him alone." She felt her heart race as what seemed like a gnarled hand brushed past her cheek, fingerless yet grasping. They were toying with her, like a predator with its prey. A low rumble rolled through the woods, as if the forest itself was unsettled. She could feel the ground tremble beneath her feet, the forest shifting, responding to the malevolent presence. Whispering branches scraped at her arms, clutching at her, urging her to retreat. But how could she? In the swirling chaos, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted a brilliant warmth aflicker. A dying ember in the surging dark. "Danny!" Sarah turned, focused, desperate. Danny stood still, eyes wide, caught in a trance, a hazy veil over his innocence. "Danny, you have to come to me. You're stronger than they are." Her heart raced as she lunged for him again, feeling a strangling grip close around her ankle, pulling her down. She stumbled but fought back. Gripping the flashlight, an idea sparked. "If they want a piece of me," she murmured, more to herself than to them, determination igniting in her spirit. "Then I'll just have to give them something they cannot have." With a primal scream, she aimed the flashlight directly at the tendrils of shadow, slashing through them. In that moment, she felt the pull grow weaker, the grip of darkness loosening. What more would she have to sacrifice? But then, from the depths of the gloom, came a voice hauntingly familiar. "You already offered us everything." Sarah, her heart dropped. What had she done? As the pressure of darkness closed in again, a sharp chill swept through the air. Sarah staggered back, breathless. Was there still time to reclaim her son? Or had she already sealed their fate? What was the price of sacrifice? And could love conquer shadows that whispered her deepest fears? Danny's eyes shone in the flashlight's beam, but the shadows crept closer, their forms writhing in eager delight. Panic surged through Sarah's veins. She could not let them take him. She wouldn't. A primal instinct kicked in, her survival instincts sharpening like knives aimed at her heart. "Danny!" She screamed again, but clarity was slipping from her grip. He was still entranced, the lights in his eyes flickering like dying stars. "Danny, please. In the distance, a low rumble echoed, like thunder rolling through the ground below. The air thickened, crackling with malevolence. Each breath Sarah took tasted bitter, laced with dread. Time was slipping like sand through her fingers, and she felt the shadows tugging at her, a sinister army eager to swallow her whole. She shifted her stance, drawing deeper into the light of the flashlight, willing it to hold back the tide of darkness. Leave him alone. You want me? Then take me. She shouted, her voice hoarse and raw. The shadows twisted, momentarily pausing, their whispers faltering. Breathing heavily, she pushed forward, forcing herself closer to Danny, the center of the storm. The darkness hissed as if in conversation, a murmured discussion meant to unravel her resolve. This one? One of them purred, slick and oily, the words slithering around her like a serpent. She won't mend a thing, mother. They were mocking her, but that did nothing to quell her desperation. A flicker of hope ignited in her mind. If the purpose was freedom, maybe there was a way out. But at what cost? Danny. You have to fight. She implored, her voice trembling. A quick glimpse revealed tears rolling down her son's cheeks, glistening in the flashlight's glow. They were unexpected, like mere mortals, a reminder of his humanity amidst this chaos. But just then, another tendril lunged, wrapping around her wrist, its icy grip sending shockwaves of terror shooting up her arm. She clutched the flashlight tighter, heart racing, and raised it, illuminating the grip around her. No! She shrieked, swinging it like a weapon. The beam sliced through the darkness, causing the nearest shadow to recoil, shrieking against the light. You think light can protect you? It hissed, almost enraged. Sarah was losing ground. Danny's face was ghostly pale, and the shadows were emboldened, creeping closer. The grip around her wrist slackened as she yanked free, retreating into the harsh glow. Something needs to give, she muttered through clenched teeth, driven by the palpable fear for her son. She felt an eerie connection surfacing, echoing back through time, tugging at forgotten memories, sacrifices made, deals struck. Would you trade your very essence? The shadows taunted, the words slithering in her mind, trying to burrow into the cracks of her will. And suddenly, clarity broke through the haze. I'll do it. I'll trade my heart, she shouted back defiantly. In that instant, the shadows froze, and the air grew dense with an unholy energy, as if the forest itself held its breath. Their excitement surged. Such sweet surrender, they crooned, voices a symphony of malice. No! Danny's pleading voice broke through the darkness. Don't! His eyes locked onto hers, pure fear reflected back at her. But her mind was made up. This was the only way to save him. She could feel her heartbeat slow, solid determination replacing fear. And then the ground shook beneath her feet, dragging her attention back to the shadows, now swirling unnaturally among themselves, anticipation crackling like distant thunder. Once a heart is offered, the price must be paid, they sang, their ethereal voices swirling in cacophonous delight. Sarah, please don't. Danny's voice wavered, crackling with desperation, but she was beyond reasoning. What pieces of herself would she really have to surrender? As the shadows loomed, ravenous, Sarah steeled herself, ready to confront the abyss. But linked together in that fraught moment, darkness and light battled within her. What terrible things awaited when she crossed the line? The tension snapped, promising an answer in the chilling silence. In that heartbeat, Sarah sensed something primordial, something sinister flickering deep in the woods. She realized she wasn't alone in this deal. And before she could react, an unexpected voice sounded from the shadows, a whisper of a truth she had not anticipated. Welcome to the family, Sarah. As the shadows surged towards her, she felt herself teetering on the edge of an unfathomable abyss. What was this family? And in the depths of this desperate battle, how much of herself would she lose? The shadows pulsed, alive with anticipation, wrapping around her like a shroud. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, she could almost hear it echoing against the silence, a cruel reminder that time was running out. Sarah Danny's plea cut through the chaos, his voice thin and cracking. She could see his struggle, the flicker of recognition in his eyes fighting against the enchantment that held him captive. Gritting her teeth, Sarah fought against the entangling darkness. "Stay with me, Danny," she cried. "You're stronger than this." The flashlight's beam wavered in her shaking grip, illuminating the glistening anguish on Danny's face and the writhing mass of shadows that threatened to swallow him whole. She took a step forward, each movement feeling heavier than the last under the weight of dread hanging in the air. The shadows hissed, their discontent palpable. "You think you can bargain with us? You think love holds any weight here?" They slithered closer, and the chilling sensation wrapped around her heart like a vice. It felt almost familiar, like a pang of guilt or regret. "Leave him alone," she screamed again, a desperate note slicing through her words. But the shadows merely laughed, a chorus of malevolence that reverberated through the still air. Suddenly, she felt the unrelenting grip of those tendrils tightening around her ankles, dragging her down. The flashlight flickered dangerously, the beam faltering like her dwindling resolve. She stumbled, falling forward. "Sarah!" Danny's voice cracked, urgency slicing through the fabric of the night. Using all the strength she could muster, she twisted and kicked, tearing her gaze from Danny to face the encroaching doom. "I want to let you take him." She wasn't bargaining anymore, she was fighting. The shadows recoiled slightly, their grim faces contorting in varying expressions of rage and surprise. "Foolish mother!" one shouted, the words laced with venom. "You believe you can resist? We'll take your heart, whether you wish it or not." With that, the shadows surged forward, a wave of darkness crashing down upon her. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, to abandon the fight, but the sight of Danny's frightened eyes anchored her, igniting a desperate, reckless courage. "I will give all," she shouted, her voice hoarse, passion coursing through her veins. She felt her heart thumping violently as though it were aware of the impending sacrifice. A shadow detached from the mass, approaching her slowly, its form swirling. "Then so be it," it hissed, breath warm against her skin. A heart traded for a heart. A mother for a child. As it drew near, the figure morphed, the features becoming vaguely human, womanly yet distorted. "You will never escape, this is a pact sealed with blood." In that moment, Sarah understood the forsaken nature of her choice. Words echoed from the depths of her mind. Once a heart is offered, the price must be paid. "Danny!" she cried out, not knowing if this would truly save him or plunge them both into eternal darkness. And then, in the swirling chaos, light flickered sharply, a piercing brilliance that made the shadows shriek and retreat. Was it hope, or a final trick of the darkness? She had no time to ponder, the air thickening with their fury. "Foolish woman!" shadows howled. "The truth lies hidden in the darkness. You will discover your reality soon enough." The moment hung suspended, fear and resolve colliding as she clutched Danny's hand, fighting to find an anchor amidst the storm they faced. What would the next choice demand? What would be left of her if she succeeded? The shadows recoiled once more, forming a swirling vortex of whispers, talons stretched toward them in a ravenous hunger. Her heart raced, knowing the next moment could mean everything or nothing at all, and then the ground trembled violently, shaking their very souls. Danny's terrified gasp pierced through her, blocking out the cacophony, and she squeezed his hand tighter, resolute. "Hold on," she ordered, eyes narrowing against the darkness, willing herself to confront the unraveling chaos. What awaited them when the dust finally settled? How could she protect him when the shadows themselves threatened to reveal a truth darker than she could ever imagine? The ground stilled for a moment of silence amidst the chaos. The shadows whispered and howled, their anger palpable. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps as she held on to Danny, her heart pounding like a pulsing drum in her chest. The familiar warmth of his hand kept her anchored, and for a fleeting second, she felt the veil of darkness lift. "Don't let go," she urged, her voice hoarse but determined. Danny met her gaze, his eyes wide with terror, yet she saw a flicker of bravery in him too. They were in this together, they had to be. The shadows coiled back, undulating like serpents ready to strike. "You think your love can shield you?" they sneered, their voice a sickening sound that crawled beneath her skin. "What is left in the face of your own horrors?" The floor beneath them quaked again, sending ripples of trembling fear through her body. Structures creaked overhead, their wooden frames protesting against the dark onslaught. Just then, a blinding flash illuminated the space, revealing glimpses of familiar faces twisted in anguish within the shadows. Friends? Family? Their hollow eyes searched for salvation, and their silent screams echoed in her mind. She blinked, disbelief clawing at her throat. No, this can't be real. With each flash, her heart twisted more painfully, each figure a memory she wished to forget. She had thought she was there to save Danny, but this nightmare was more than just echoes of shadows, it was her own guilt brought to life. The canopy of darkness thickened, blurring the light. "Face your sins." The shadows bellowed, their hostility evident, each word laced with a sinister satisfaction. "You've chosen to stand against your own needing sacrifice. What is a child compared to the darkness that wraps around you?" "Stop!" Sarah yelled, choking on her emotions, her hands shaking at Danny's. "I know what I did. I know my mistakes. But I refuse to lose him." "Foolishness." A shadow lunged at her, fingers outstretched like talons, glimmering with a dark temptation. She could feel the icy breath at her neck, and without thinking, she yanked Danny behind her, facing the oncoming terror with a fierce resolve. "We can't let them in. Not now." Each pulse of her heart felt like a confession, beating in rhythm with dark remnants of her past that danced at the edges. Memories unspooled within her, a son she lost, opportunities squandered, voices she hadn't listened to, buried deep. "Those shadows don't own me, and they'll never own him." She screamed defiantly, but the shadows shrieked back, tearing human faces into nightmarish forms that fluctuated with her thoughts and regrets. "You think this battle is won by sheer will?" they taunted, intertwining with her very essence, wrapping regret around her throat. "Your past is buried, but it has claws." As the darkness bore down, Sarah felt an overwhelming weight on her chest, the shadows tightening around her heart like a vice. It threatened to collapse her spirit, to drag her into the depths of despair. She attempted to shake it off, to strike back. It wasn't only Danny's life at stake, it was her soul that the darkness sought to claim. Summoning all she had, she focused on the love she felt in that moment, using it as a weapon against the chaos. "You will not take us." The words flew from her lips with the force of an explosion. The shadows hissed, recoiling as if hit, but they spread like a tide, reaching for every flicker of her hope. Suddenly, amidst the noise, a deep rumble shook the air. The shadows split, twisting apart like a dam breaking, and for a heartbeat, a path lay open. Lightning arced through, illuminating their way. "Danny, this is our chance." But in that fleeting moment, her mind clouded with doubt. Would escaping the darkness only lead them into darker depths? Fear clutched at her heart, but she couldn't hesitate, not now. They had to move. "Run!" she urged Danny, her voice choked with urgency, and together they plunged into the crack of light ahead, pushing back against the shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. As they dashed through the opening, the shadows wailed in despair, their grasp losing hold. "You can't escape the truth." The voice echoed, a chilling reminder weaving into the very fabric of their escape. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find safety, or would the shadows continue to reach for them even in the light? The question hung in the air as they ran, uncertainty clawing at their heels. The world burst forth into chaos as they emerged from the darkness. Bright light flooded their senses, an overwhelming contrast to the suffocating black they had just fled. Sarah blinked rapidly, adjusting to the piercing glare of sunlight above. They had plunged into a desolate landscape, barren and still, like a forgotten graveyard. "Where are we?" Danny's voice wavered, his small frame trembling beside her. "Keep moving," she urged, scanning the horizon for anything resembling safety. The shadows still loomed at the periphery, their whispers faint but insistent, like gnats buzzing around their heads. The air felt different here, charged with an eerie stillness. The trees that had once danced with life now stood petrified, their limbs twisted in unnatural angles, reaching toward heaven as if beseeching forgiveness. Each step felt like a sin being weighed on a scale. She could feel the eyes of the shadows upon them, lurking just beyond their reach. Mom Danny's voice broke through her thoughts again, soft and plaintive. What do they want from us? She wanted to tell him they were safe now, that they had escaped. Yet, the air hung heavy with something insidious, a promise that they were far from free. They want to make us suffer, she whispered, gripping his hand tighter as they ventured deeper into the silent expanse. As they walked, time seemed to stretch and distort. Hours felt like minutes while other moments stranded them in a void of confusion. A road stretched ahead, cracked and uneven, leading into an unsettling uncertainty. Sarah caught the faint sound of someone crying, a desperate, echoing wail that chilled her. It stopped her in her tracks. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her heart racing. The cry was unmistakable, it sent shockwaves of fear through her body. "There's someone here," Danny nodded, his face pale, eyes wide. Unable to resist, Sarah began to follow the sound. Each footstep felt heavier, as if the ground itself was clawing at her. They stepped cautiously onto the road, where the trees flanked them like sentinels, grim and judgmental. The wailing grew louder, wrapping around them, tugging at the threads of her sanity. It was a voice that spoke of despair, of horror. At last, they rounded a bend, coming upon a ramshackle cabin, doors and windows gaping open like mouths in horror. The cries echoed within. "We need to help whoever it is," Sarah insisted, adrenaline surging through her veins. Danny hesitated. "What if it's a trap? We can't just leave them." Her voice trembled with urgency, the shadows seemingly closing in around them. "We have to try." Danny nodded reluctantly, and together they approached the cabin, cautious yet resolute. Inside, the air stank of decay. The cries intensified as they stepped over the threshold. Shadows flickered in the corners of her eyes, just beyond the lingering sunlight. "Hello?" Sarah called, her voice almost swallowed by the looming fear. The wailing stopped abruptly, replaced by a suffocating silence. It was then that she felt it, a cold blast of air, like death passing through her. "Stay close," she warned Danny as they ventured further into the cabin, the floorboards creaking ominously beneath their weight. Suddenly, from the darkness, a figure stumbled into view, a woman, her clothes tattered, her face twisted in anguish. "You shouldn't have come here," she gasped, eyes wild with a panic that struck deep in Sarah's chest. They're coming for you next." Before Sarah could respond, the shadows flickered at the corners of the room, swirling with fierce intent, hungry for the light. "What do you mean?" she yelled, but it was too late. The figure dissolved into shadows before them, transforming into dreadful faces of their past, those she had lost, those she couldn't save. "Run!" Danny screamed as terror surged, their refuge now a prison. But this was only the beginning. What lay ahead in the layers of darkness that teetered beyond comprehension? In the sinister silence, the shadows whispered secrets of a horrifying truth, eager to unearth buried fears. Next to her, Danny's grip tightened, and together, they braced for what the shadows would expose. In a world where every choice weighed heavy, would they uncover a darkness meant to stay hidden, or would it consume them whole? The air thickened, heavy with dread, as Sarah and Danny stared into the abyss that had swallowed the woman whole. The tension was palpable, a living thing that pressed against them, whispering lies and fueling their fear. The cabin, once a refuge, felt like a tomb with long-forgotten secrets waiting to suffocate them. "Mom, what just happened?" Danny's voice trembled, cracking under the weight of disbelief. Sarah could barely find her own words. The shadows danced like restless spirits, ribbons of darkness weaving through the corners, laughing at their misguided hope. "Stay close, Danny," she managed to say, but her voice was shaky. Instinctively, they backed away from the void, edging toward the door they'd just entered. Every creak of the floorboard below sounded like a warning, a countdown to that which was yet to reveal itself, but the cabin had no intention of letting them leave unscathed. A sound erupted from the depths of the darkness behind them, a low growl that shook the very marrow in her bones. It resonated with the kind of malice only born from pure, unfiltered hate. "We need to go now," she shouted, the urgency cracking like a whip in the stagnant air. Danny's eyes were wide, reflecting a fear she couldn't protect him from. They sprinted toward the door, but as they reached it, the frame seemed to stretch and warp, closing in on them. The light outside dimmed, shadows swirling like a storm, blocking their path to freedom. "How do we get out?" he cried, his voice rising in panic. "Mom!" Before she could answer, a monstrous figure coalesced from the dark, looming, frothing with shadowy limbs that reached for them with a hunger that made her stomach churn. A grotesque face, contorted with anguish and horror, took form. It seemed familiar, yet foreign, a mockery of the human visage that once wore hope. "No!" Sarah shouted, and with a fierce pull, she yanked Danny toward the back of the cabin, where a small shattered window offered a sliver of their escape. She could hear the growl transform into chilling laughter behind them, a sound that clawed at her sanity. "Jump, Danny!" she commanded, pushing him toward the jagged glass. "Do it now." He hesitated, uncertainty clouding his young face, which twisted her heart. In that brief moment, shadows lunged, pulling him back. "No!" she screamed, and desperate, she shoved him through. As he tumbled outside, she felt the claws of darkness snag at her clothes, chilling her skin, stealing her breath. "Mom!" Danny shouted from outside, panic electrifying his voice as he realized he was now alone. He scrambled back to reach for her as she fought against the shadows, clawing at her own flesh, pulling her deeper into their abyss. With one last surge of adrenaline, she twisted her body, breaking free from the shadow's grasp, and dove through the broken window just as the cabin shuddered like a dying beast, releasing a dissonant wail. Rolling onto the ground outside, Sarah gasped for air, the sunlight feeling warm but tainted, as if touched by dark hands. She turned, gathering her breath only to see the cabin pulsating behind her, shadows swirling, threatening to swallow them whole. "Mom, we have to go," Danny pleaded, his voice cracking with fear. She shot him an intense look, fear intertwining deeply with determination. "What's behind us wants to keep us trapped, Danny." "We can't look back." As they staggered to their feet, a curtain of shadows emerged from the cabin, sweeping across the ground toward them with relentless speed. They raced down the path, but as they sprinted, the shadows whispered secrets, revealing things that could curl the heart of any soul. "Sarah! You can't escape!" they hissed, echoing the echo of cracked glass, but she wouldn't listen. With Danny's small hand clutched tightly in hers, they pushed forward, desperation fueling their flight. How long could they run? What would the darkness demand next? Would they ever reach the end, or was it only the beginning of an even deeper nightmare? The ground beneath them trembled, shadows snapping at their heels, as Sarah bravely led the way. Forward. But a dark truth loomed ahead, eager to plunge them back into despair where they would drown in their own failures, and time itself faded like a fleeting shadow at twilight. As they ran, the world before them became a blur of colors and shadows. Sarah gripped Danny's hand tightly, her heart racing against the suffocating dread that threatened to pull them back into darkness. They couldn't afford to look back, couldn't let the voices entwine with their thoughts. "Keep your eyes on me," she urged, her voice sharp with determination. Danny nodded, his small face flushed with fear but steeled with resolve. Together, they pounded down the twisted pathway, the air thick with whispers that clawed at their sanity. With each step, the shadows lunged, eager to reclaim what they believed was theirs. The darkness was a living thing, pulsating, alive with insidious hunger. "This is not over, Sarah," it taunted, words weaving through the air like a poisoned thread. Suddenly, they rounded a sharp bend, and there it was, the edge of the woods. Sunlight poured through the trees, a glowing path beckoning them forward. The laughter of children playing in the distance reached their ears, an inviting sound that sparked hope within Sarah's chest. They were so close. "Mom, we can make it," Danny encouraged, pushing his legs harder, his determination flooding his small body, but then the shadows surged again, wrapping around their ankles, trying to pull them back into the claustrophobic grip of the dark forest. Sarah felt Danny's knees buckle, and in that frantic moment, she gathered every ounce of strength. "Danny, hold on to me," she yelled as they stumbled. She couldn't let go. Summoning the thunderous love only a mother could possess, she called upon all that she had been willing to sacrifice. "You will not take him," she screamed, her heart beating wildly as light exploded around them, pushing the shadows back just for a moment, revealing a fleeting glimpse of freedom. "Run!" She propelled them forward with newfound fire. They burst into the clearing, sunlight enveloping them like a warm embrace, washing away the chill of the woods. With every ounce of will, she willed the shadows to retreat, to lose their grip. But just as the periphery of safety came into view, a monstrous figure reared from the dense fog of darkness. It towered over them, eyes blazing like embers. "You think you can escape?" it bellowed, its voice deep and mocking, echoing the fears they had faced along the way. "Danny!" Sarah gasped, her heart dropping as she felt the ground beneath her tremble. "Keep running. I love you." Fear stretched her reaction time thin, and before she could react, the creature lunged. But as its shadowy hands reached for them, sunlight flickered brilliantly, the powerful glow expanding, pushing the creature back like a tide. The light. Sarah realized, her instincts kicking in. "We can fight it." She turned to Danny, panic and hope colliding in her chest. "Focus on the light, sweetheart. Focus." With her words, shimmering warmth surged around them, the brightness intensifying against the suffocating darkness. Together, they both clasped their hands together, exuding their love, their determination like a shield. "What are you doing?" the creature screeched, unraveling at the seams. "No. You cannot defy us." In a fierce burst, they shouted, "We want light. We choose love." As they did, the creature recoiled, darkness swirling away like heavy smoke in the wind. Freedom surged through their veins as they concentrated, igniting every flicker of joy, every comforting memory they had shared, the laughter, the warmth, the bond of a mother and son. A brilliant explosion of light erupted between them and the darkness, consuming the creature whole. It writhed, a haunting scream followed, filled with ancient fury and despair. Then, as quickly as it had emerged, it vanished into the ether, leaving behind a calm silence. The shadows melted away, dissipating like a cruel dream at dawn. Breathless, hearts racing, Sarah and Danny stood hand in hand, bathed in warmth under the noon sun. The fear began to recede, leaving in its wake a fragile serenity. "Did we really do it?" Danny whispered, squinting his eyes against the glare. "I think we did," Sarah nodded, tears filling her eyes. They were exhausted but alive, liberated from the clutches of Maplewood's terror. A murmur of children's laughter echoed around them, and glancing toward the sound, they saw a gathering of families celebrating the 4th of July. Red, white, and blue decorations framed the scene, sunlight glistening against happy faces, unaware of the horrors hidden just beyond their jubilant existence. "Mom!" Danny cried, his eyes sparkling. "Can we go and join them?" With a smile breaking through her tears, she nodded. Together, they made their way toward the joyous crowd. As they stepped into the light, Sarah felt the weight of the shadows lift entirely, a new chapter beginning with each step, every heartbeat filled with promise. She embraced her son tightly, filled with gratitude for this moment, the warmth of his small body against hers, anchoring her back to reality. It was time to live again, time to tell their story, time to celebrate together. As they joined in the laughter, the shadows faded into whispers, a distant memory of what they had overcome. They had broken the curse of Maplewood, but as the sun dipped lower in the sky, a slight rustle in the trees cautioned against complacency. The shadows had receded, but they had not vanished. As long as memories lingered, darkness could always find a way to return. So live boldly, love fiercely, and remember that every light casts shadows. The warmth of family can illuminate even the darkest depths, but never stop fighting, because the next hidden truth might come knocking again. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss our next exclusive stories and the twists that are yet to come. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Flood the comments section with all of your reactions and theories about the ending. We're dying to know what you think. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this wild conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.